In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Hold up. We didn't even do the intro yet, man.
Oh, yeah. Hey, take it away, James.
Yeah, sure. Welcome to Gospel and Grace, a podcast discussing theology and how it relates to life. My name is James Engel.
And I'm Chris Middleton. Welcome to episode 3, guys.
Yeah, welcome back. So Chris, man, as always, what's going on with you?
Just kicking it old school, hanging out, same old stuff, really. I'm excited. We've had some spring weather lately. It's been like in the 70s.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, man, it's been sweet.
Oh, man. I'm excited. I love spring for two main reasons.
Only two?
Well, there's a lot, but one, baseball season's about to start. I just love baseball season. You know, opening day, warm weather. It's just there's something about it I just really like, and also the fishing gets pretty good in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm planning on doing some fishing this year because I haven't done much since I moved up here.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm kind of planting the seeds to the wifey.
Oh, yeah?
See if I can get me a new fishing kayak.
How are you planting? Like, what are you doing? Like, leaving little
Well, I've
notes or
said
hints?
a few things. See, I mentioned it a long time ago how I'd like to have a fishing kayak.
Probably
so I
just
planted
tell her.
the seed, right? You plant the seed, and then you mention it again a little bit later. Oh, yeah, hey, I still want a fishing kayak. You know, so you're gradually, growing and all this. And then next thing you know, you're in academy, and you have one in your cart, and you're fishing the next day.
Wow.
So that's the plan. We'll see. I don't have the kayak yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, dude. Hey, I kind of do a similar thing with my wife. You know what I do?
What?
I tell Maggie, I'll be like, it'll be early in the morning. I'll be like, so, what are we gonna be eating tonight for supper? And she'll be like, oh, I don't know. I'm gonna cook something. I haven't decided yet. I'm like, oh, okay. I let it drop. Comes around 11 o'clock noon. Hey, honey, what are we eating for supper there? And, I was just kind of wondering because dinner time's coming soon. And she'll be like, oh, well, I was going to make chicken and blah, 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 and whatever. It's like, oh, okay. And then when it gets time around dinner, I'll be like, so what time are we eating supper? And then so that way, because you can see where my concern is.
Yeah.
I don't want her to forget.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go hungry. So
Yeah.
I follow you there, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's they're way smarter than us, though. I'm sure they pick up on this stuff. They just don't ever say anything.
She knows. I'm sure she just loves me and lets me do it anyways.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I haven't talked to you much this week. What's been going on other than planting dinner seeds?
Dinner seeds, bird seeds, cat food. I mean, of course, I'm still trying to grow out a beard. It doesn't really grow up on my cheeks, so it doesn't. I don't like the way it looks, but I'm trying to. Maybe this is just like the bad phase where if I get through this, it'll start to look awesome. Who knows? I don't know. But there's that, and then my wife, Maggie, she's out of town. She went to go visit her family in Atlanta, and.
So you're a bachelor right now, kind of.
Yeah, I'm home alone, just me and the cat. And
cat.
So, well, what's funny too is she actually prepared me meals and put them in a freezer because she was concerned about A, if I was going to eat, and then B, what I was going to eat. So
yeah.
But yeah, so she took care of me there, and so I have plenty of food, have prepared meals, so she doesn't have to worry about me.
So she prepared you meals for like a week or two so you don't starve to death or binge out on pizza?
Yeah, I could make soup. I actually made a meatloaf the other day. I put 3 mozzarella cheese sticks in the middle. I covered it in meat, and then I put bacon on top.
Nice.
And I ate the whole thing.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if like an egalitarian's listening to this right now?
Oh, God.
Oh my goodness, trigger warning. His wife made all these meals for him. Oh man, he should be making meals for her. But,
oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's funny. That's good stuff.
Chris, man, what are we talking about today?
We're going to drop them truths on evolution.
Going to drop a little truth bombs?
A little bit of evolution truth bombs.
Okay. Evolution. All right. So, what is this, like what kind of evolution?
Mainly, we're going to be showing the inconsistencies and the absurdities, really, of Darwinian evolution.
That's absurd.
And it has no account for just the simple things
No
that
account.
we know exist.
No exist.
Yeah, so let's Darwinian evolution is one of those things that it seems to be a culturally accepted, and not only accepted, but culturally assumed truth, because we've, at least our generation has kind of grown up just being told that the universe is billions of years old.
Yeah.
Big Bang Theory, we have evolved from, through the evolutionary process, and we just want to show that it's actually pretty absurd, and it's no way compatible with the biblical creation account.
Yeah.
That's what we want to throw out today.
Yeah, so on that thought, let's start. What is the biblical creation account? Because you were reading earlier something.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Was that it?
Well, that's the foundational basis for what we're going to get into for the rest of the podcast.
No, I mean, was that it in the beginning? Because in the beginning, you just I said we were recording, and you just start spouting off in the beginning, and then I was like, wait, hang on, let's do the intro. But that's all you wanted to say?
Pretty much.
Oh, well.
I mean, there's a whole creation story there in Genesis 1, but that's where we're going to start with, and maybe we'll get into the later here in a little while.
Okay.
So,
well, yeah. Let's first, I guess, start off by talking about what is evolution basically in a nutshell teach? Like, obviously, millions of years.
Sure. So when we have the biblical creation account, and then we can't dive into all the depths of Darwinian evolution or all the depths of creation in one podcast. I mean, we may end up doing a little series on this, but for today, we just want to touch some of the foundational issues with Darwinian evolution. So one of the just main basic ones is in Genesis 1, we read that God created man on the sixth day. Darwinian evolution teaches that men came about through the evolutionary process over millions of years through natural selection, basically survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Those two worldviews are not compatible whatsoever. And yet there are many Christians out there who's never really dove into I'm sure everyone's thought about it, like how does this compare with this? How does that compare with that?
Sure, yeah.
But that's why we're doing this show today, is we want to show that we don't put science up here and the Bible just right underneath it.
Yeah.
The way we interpret science is through the biblical lens.
Mm-hmm.
God's word is truth, and that is our ultimate standard.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to do. So to start with, we'll start with evolution teaches that man came about through the evolutionary process over millions or billions of whatever they want to use today.
Long time.
many years. Whereas the biblical creation account teaches that God created man on the sixth day. And that's one area we're going to focus on. So,
yeah, and also, so I guess on the creationist side, and I guess we'll define that, a creationist is someone that believes that the account of creation we have in the book of Genesis is truly how it happened, and they take it word for word. So going in that a little bit, we know Genesis says that God created everything in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. So I know you've done research on this, and you know a lot about it. Those actual days, I know some Christians will say, well, 6 days, but there could have been thousands of years in between those days, or millions of years even. But Genesis seems to, because it is historical narrative.
Right.
Most scholars and theologians agree that Genesis is a historical narrative. When Moses wrote that, he was not trying to, emphasize like some sort of infuse like poetry or metaphors. He was literally saying, no, this is how it happened. And so we understand those are 24-hour days. But you know a little bit about the actual word usage and semantic range, right?
Yeah, so the Hebrew word for day is yom. Y-O-M, yom, and all words do have a semantic range. We'll just discuss the semantic range of the word day right now. So if I were to say, back in my day, blah, 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 well, that obviously, even though the word day is singular, when when you add the context to back in my day to that, well, that's obviously talking about a period of time.
Yeah.
Because the semantic range of the word day allows that to happen. Okay? So the Hebrew word for day is yom. So if I say God created this on day 1, God created this on day 2, God created this on day 3, well, obviously, I'm referring to a very specific day in which He did that.
Yeah.
It's still the same word, but what we have to understand is, like James said, Genesis is written as historical narrative.
Yeah.
Therefore, we cannot violate Yom's semantic range just to get across our thousands or millions of years ideology into the Scriptures.
Yeah, because essentially what some Christians are doing is they believe the Bible, but they also believe what they were taught in school or studied on their own, however they arrived at it. Most of us just heard about evolution through school and took it at face value, and they're trying to bring those two together, and they're not compatible. Especially, I know, for example, Jesus said in the Gospels, some people came up to him and said, "Hey, when are we allowed to divorce our wives? When is that acceptable?" And Jesus referred to the story of Adam and Eve, saying, "In the beginning, Adam and Eve was told Adam to leave his family, cleave to his wife, become one flesh." Well, there, Jesus is basically saying that he agrees with what Genesis says, that in the beginning there was Adam and Eve at the very start. And so if he's in agreement about that, then Jesus is also in agreement about there being 6 days.
Yeah.
And so my fear is that many Christians that maybe just don't know about it or whatever, but especially if you have studied and you come to a conclusion that, no, I think evolution's right, the Earth is millions of years old and there's thousands and thousands, millions of years between each day to fit that in, you're basically calling Jesus a liar. Because he explicitly said in the beginning Adam and Eve, and use that as an example. So that's just something else that, thinking through this, I came upon, and I was like, wow, that's,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to call Jesus a liar if they're a Christian. Now, if you're not a Christian, sure, Jesus is a liar, he's a phony, he didn't rise from the dead, all that, blah, blah, blah. But, for the true Christian, you need to consider where you stand on the book of Genesis, because it relates to the gospel. It relates to Christ's words, what he said. Can we trust him? And all of that. So
yeah, and we need to make sure that we're consistent with our own worldview. In an apologetic setting, whoever's consistent with their worldview is usually the one that wins the argument.
Yeah.
Not that we're just out to win arguments and stuff like that, but it does show who is telling truth. The sign of a failed argument is inconsistency. So, and I'm gonna show during this podcast, or James and I will show, that the evolutionist has to be inconsistent with their foundational beliefs that their worldview demands in order to even dialogue and have conversation and debate the creation account.
Yeah.
And we'll show that here in a little bit. We want to cover a few more basic things that evolution teaches, and we'll dive into the apologetic side of it. So one of those things is, of course, we already talked about man coming about through the evolutionary process, but even before that, they'll say that all living things came from one single life source, meaning a banana is related to a donkey through the random acts of evolutionary processes.
Yeah. Or to go back further, we're basically stardust.
We're basically stardust that just came about through random time and chance.
You got a star in you.
No.
You're special. You're a star.
No, they won't say anything special.
I'm a star, Chris.
We're just animals. We're just bags of meat.
Well, I know with the beard I have right now, I probably do look like an animal. I probably should shave.
You have the mange.
What? Dude,
I'm sorry.
Come on.
No, anyway,
You always make fun of me on these things.
Let's not get too sidetracked here. So evolution teaches that we all stem from one single living organism, and through billions of years of natural selection, survival of the fittest, which all make up the evolutionary processes, here we all are. So for all this to be true, the evolutionist has to have radical faith and there have been a change of kinds. What do I mean by kinds? What I mean by kinds is in the Genesis account of creation, we see where God created all things according to their kinds, male and female. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the evolutionist will deny that. They'll say, well, no, all these different kinds come from one single life source over billions of years. Well, give me an example. Show me where one kind is changing to another kind, because if you want to know the actual science behind it, it's never been proven, it's never been observed, it's not testable, and it's not repeatable. Therefore, evolution is not a scientific theory.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what science is. Like a scientific method, it's based on a collection of data through both observation and experimentation. So it's got to be observable, and you have to actually be able to do experimentation on it to verify if it's true. You can't do any of those things when you're just banking on the assumption that there's a long period of time. I mean, it's almost like how you hear in fairy tales, right? It's always like a long time ago and something happened. Well, in my opinion, evolution's almost like a fairy tale. Because, I mean, you can't prove that. It's just you're stringing along all these things and using time to be like, well, you can't see it because of time. I mean, I have here written down, this is what Richard Dawkins said. He said, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. So he's making fun of Christians, basically, saying that, we're just copped out of using our minds and thinking. But here's the thing. He even says, too, we are condemned. This is Richard Dawkins. We are condemned to live only for a few decades, and that's too small time scale to see evolution going on. Well, of course it is. Because...
the person that saying faith is utterly ridiculous has faith because he can't observe it, right?
And that's the bottom line, is that they're exercising faith in order to believe in this theory. And at the end of the day, it's just a theory. They cannot prove it.
And it's not a scientific theory, like I said.
Yeah, it's not science anymore as soon as you step out of observation and experimentation.
Right.
So that's...
What it is, it's a philosophy. It's a worldview. It's a worldview in which people worship the creation rather than the creator. Yeah. That's exactly what they're doing. And they claim science, they use scientific language, but at the foundations, what they believe is not observable, testable, and repeatable. Therefore, science left the discussion a long time ago.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about different kinds, what's interesting is we're going to have in the show notes a video by Ray Comfort. It's called Evolution versus God. It's really cool because he goes up to different universities speaking with professors and students that are all going through to get their masters and stuff in biology and science and that kind of field of study. And he asks all these different people, give me one example of a change of kinds. And the only answers he get is that they mention bacteria. And one guy mentions a kind of fish called a stickleback fish. But when Ray asks them to clarify and what did they become, they're like, well, a fish, of course, or, well, it's still bacteria, but it's different. All that is adaptation. And adaptation is observable. And it exists. That's what Darwin saw on those islands. Is he saw different birds that have adapted to eat different kinds of seeds and stuff based on what part of the island they were on. Now, that is not a change of kinds.
Yeah, that's just adaptation and speciation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the big deal with why we keep mentioning the word kinds is, well, obviously that's what the Bible uses, and that's what evolution kind of teaches. Evolution teaches that one kind can become another kind. The problem is any time speciation comes about, or even mutation comes about, there is a loss of genetic code. There's a loss of genetic information when you start going from the original down to these different species. So, for instance, a wolf and a chihuahua are the same kind. They're the canine kind. However, they look radically different, don't they?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because there's been a loss of information from the wolf down to the chihuahua.
Or maybe just because one eats meat and the other doesn't. But that's a different. But yeah, loss of information. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the biblical account of creation, all the different kinds that God originally created had all the genetic information, all the genetic makeup for all the different species we see today. Noah did not have a million species on the ark. He had 2 of each kind, male and female. That's all he needed, because all those contain the necessary genetic information for all the species we see today. That is science. That is observable. That is repeatable. What is not is the change of kinds. A dinosaur did not turn into a bird through the evolutionary processes. That's a completely different. Those are 2 different kinds. That's never been observable. That's never been repeatable. So, anyway, what's next, James?
Well, I mean, we kind of covered that. The next biggest thing is the 2 worldviews that each person's coming from. They're not compatible, but I would say the evolutionist worldview is inconsistent, and the reason why is because they borrow from our worldview. Our worldview dictates that God created everything in 6 literal days. It dictates that the reason that we have immaterial aspects of us, such as emotions, logic, reason, all those things, is because God created us in His image. So we have the image of God stamped upon each person that lives in this world, and that is why we have these things. But they want to say that no, evolution, it's immaterial. We all came from one common source and evolved over millions of years of time. So they have no explanation for how we can feel hurt or that, you know, like you were talking earlier before the show about tribes, and you were saying something about that.
Yeah, so let's just think about some of the universal immaterial realities that we all know exist. So this is the fundamental issue with Darwinian evolution, is they have to be inconsistent with what they say they believe. So they'll say everything is natural and it is a materialistic universe. There is no supernatural whatsoever. Everything that exists is from matter, and just it's all natural. Here's the problem. If that's true, then when we use things like reasoning and logic and all this stuff, we're only responding on how the universe allows our brains to respond. Meaning, if naturalism is true, there really is no reason to say that naturalism is true. We're only saying that because the universe is causing our brain to react in a certain way, and that just spews out of our mouth. So what's the point of an evolutionist even, debating for truth? They have no fundamental basis for truth. God is a necessary precondition for truth. When we say they have to steal from our worldview to even make their arguments, this is what we mean. Because if there is no God, there is no truth, there is no right and wrong. There is no immaterial. They're right. But the issue is we all know that there are immaterial realities that exist. One, which James was talking about, is logic. And what even takes logic up to another level is that it's completely universal. God, through His grace, has given the world universal laws of logic, meaning I, as an American, can travel across the world, go to a jungle somewhere, not speak their language, they not speak my language, but through the universal laws of logic, we'll be able to communicate. I would be able to tell if that person's angry, happy, even hungry or thirsty, just because the laws of logic are universal. How do you explain this immaterial reality if you deny that immaterial things exist? How do you account for love? How do you account for anger? How do you account for happiness, sadness, joy? The evolutionist knows all these things exist, so they'll say that out of this corner of their mouth, but out of the other corner of their mouth they'll say, well, this is all just a naturalistic, materialistic universe. Immaterial things do not exist. The only reason you think you feel these immaterial things is because your brain is telling you to do this. So, in turn, I would say, well, the only reason you're arguing against my position is because the universe is telling your brain to do that.
Yeah, it's just weird.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, I know that word sounds mean, but it really is. It's either God or absurdity. There's no neutrality here. There's absolutely no neutrality, because we can the creationist, the Christian has a foundational basis for all the things we've talked about, and the evolutionist doesn't. So what I mean by that, let's just talk about truth right now. The other day I was talking with an evolutionist, and he said, you know, that's your problem. You believe in absolute truth. There is no absolute truth. And I said, hold up. You realize you just made a truth claim. I said, you said there is no absolute truth. And let me ask you, is that absolutely true, that there is no absolute truth? Well, he said, oh, you're just playing a semantics game with me. Well, actually, no, I'm not. That's what I mean by God or absurdity. That's basic reasoning.
Yeah.
That you made a truth claim, but you believe that there is no absolute truth. See, this is what I mean by them having to leave their own worldview and come over here and steal from the biblical worldview, because they have nothing to stand on foundationally.
Yeah, and they can't explain things like morality, like why is it no matter where you go in the world, no matter who you speak to, everyone has the same understanding that to murder is wrong, to steal is wrong, to commit adultery is wrong. If we're all just random
Stardust
that had the same origins, and the only reason I think the way I do is because of just chemical processes in my brain. I mean, well, why are we so similar with things like that? Why does everyone feel emotions and all these immaterial aspects that they can't account for because their worldview doesn't allow them to account for it?
That's the thing too. If you've noticed, atheists and evolutionists treat people with dignity. They treat people with respect. They treat people with love. All these different things. They do that because they're created in the Imago Dei, the image of God.
Yep.
They're created in the image of the God who they claim does not exist.
Yep.
And when they treat people with dignity and respect, they don't even realize that they're doing that because they're created in the image of God. It's just, I mean, I'm not. It would be consistent if they just ignored everybody, really. I mean, and think about this: is when an evolutionist shows up to debate a Christian on our origins, well, technically, he's already lost just by showing up. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean he has to assume an absolute truth to show up and defend truth, which he does not accept an absolute truth. So why would you even show up to a debate when you don't believe in absolute truth? If you truly believe that my brain fizzes this way and your brain fizzes that way, that's why you follow Darwin and this is why I follow Jesus, why do you care? So what? If I can say so what to your worldview, then that's a problem. Why? So tell me, is it really wrong for a person to steal from someone in your worldview? Is it really wrong for somebody to lie? Is it really wrong for, let's just take it a step further, is rape wrong? Can you give me a foundational basis from your own worldview to say that rape is wrong?
Well, they can't. When you ask them that question, they mostly will say, well, I believe it's wrong, but you know, that's not, my opinion is not dictated on anyone else. So it's like, so, well, is that wrong, or is it, because you're not answering the question. You're just saying, well, for me, it's wrong. I don't feel rape's right.
But here, this sounds philosophical and maybe even a little annoying. And you can even go further than that. Can you say, well, is it right that it's wrong?
Is it right that it's wrong? I'm confused.
Well, all I'm saying is they have no justification for right and wrong. So if they make a truth claim, let's say, and I'm talking about their own brain chemical responses here. If they say, I believe it's wrong, well, how do you know if it's right that you believe it's wrong? Because the only reason you're saying that is because the universe is making your brain fizz that way. So how do you even know? How do you know you're not plugged into the matrix right now and
Oh, man.
you're just, here you are, farting stuff out of your mouth from your brain fizz?
Maybe.
See what I mean? I know a lot of people may have thrown their eyebrows up when I said it's either God or absurdity, but that's exactly what it is. When your foundation is crumbling underneath your worldview, you need to throw it in the trash. You need to start over.
Yeah, I mean, it's not absurd to say, because I don't even know if we talked about this, but most creationists agree that the Earth is only about 6,000 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, give or take. No one knows the exact number, and we're not saying we do. But we get that number because if we follow the book of Genesis as historical narrative and we take it word for word as it is meant to be written, clearly, because all throughout the book, everything else is a historical narrative. Why would Genesis chapters 1 and 2 not be? We see that... through the genealogies from Adam and Eve, all the way to Jesus, and then if you add the extra 2,000 years to where we are today, that's about 6,000 years.
Yep.
And not only that, but you can't show me any archaeologist or anyone who even found any civilizations that predate about, like 4,000 BC?
Yeah,
or
right. So
somewhere in
anywhere
there.
6,000 to 7,000 years old is the oldest archaeological digs we found with regards to a civilization.
Yeah, I mean, if we've been on this earth for so long, why is there nothing predating that to this day?
Why is there still finding soft tissue in dinosaur fossils? If they went extinct millions of years ago, there would not be any soft tissue left. And another thing that the evolutionists use these different dating methods. They use different strata in the earth. So what do they do when a dinosaur is found in multiple layers of strata? What do they do? Here's this is a little flood plug for you. What do they do when they find a group of dinosaurs together and all their necks are bent straight along their backs and they're all facing the same direction? And they're buried in multiple layers of different strata. Looks to me like they were flooded in pretty quickly.
Or it could have been this giant rock from the sky.
It could have been, yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a popular. That is definitely another episode we'll do on the flood sometime in the future, because there is so much that really shows there was a worldwide flood, and that's just like a little I guess taste of it.
A little plug there for a future episode. So again, we just want to recant some of these things. Not recant, but reiterate a few of these things. So, number one, Darwinian evolution and biblical creationism is not compatible.
Nope.
Evolution teaches we came about through random processes, through natural selection, survival of the fittest over millions of years. Okay, here we are. The biblical creation says God created man on the sixth day. Creation was 6 days long. He rested on the seventh. Therefore, they are incompatible. Number two is evolution teaches that we all came from one single living organism. Therefore, that would require a change of kinds. And, of course, that's never been observed. That's never been tested. It's not science whatsoever. What is science is to believe that the original creations all had all the genetic makeup, all the genetic code in them that has brought about all the species we see today. That's speciation, that's adaptation, that's all these different things. And, of course, number three is whose worldview is consistent? Is it the Christians who do believe in objective truth and morality and say this is right, this is wrong, and we have a foundational justification for saying that? Or is it over here on the evolutionist worldview that says there is really no right and wrong, but here we're going to stand here and contend for truth? I mean, it's silly, right?
Well, it's not science, though. It's just a theory.
Yeah.
And they have to exercise the same amount, if not more, faith in their theory to justify how we got here, because they can't look at it, they can't hold it in their hands. It's just they're using time as their ally to say, well, if there's millions and billions of years, it could happen, which is it's just terrible reason. And then the Christian, on the other hand, is at least saying, no, I have faith in God, that we have this word that's very consistent all the way through from Genesis to Revelation. It tells us exactly how we got here. And the more you actually do science, the more you begin to realize that, wait, maybe the earth is only 6,000 years old. Because everything seems to point to that. Like, I know we already hinted at early civilizations, but there's a lot more.
There's simple things, and maybe this will be a future episode too. Like, for instance, the sun, the rate that the sun is burning right now. If the universe was really billions of years old, the sun would have burned out a long time ago. But you know what? You're not going to hear the evolutionists say that, because that goes against their agenda. It goes against their end result that they want.
Or they could just say the sun wasn't there millions of years ago, but then how did everything on Earth live? Well,
that's another thing. The Big Bang could be an episode too.
I don't know.
Here's one little quick plug. This is interesting.
I like plugs.
So, so Big Bang Theory believers, but pretty much nothing exploded and created everything. Or something very, very tiny exploded and created everything. Here's the problem. So, this exploded, sent everything out, and then planets started spinning, life started forming, all these different stuff. If you'll notice, if you put a grenade like in a pile of rocks and it exploded, it sends all this debris out. And what's crazy is, all these go in the different directions, but they're all spinning in the same direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about planets that spin in the opposite direction than all the others? That really doesn't make sense from a Big Bang perspective, does it?
I don't know. Most of that stuff doesn't make sense to me.
That's a future episode.
I have a small 3-pound brain, and it's mostly filled with food and coffee, and missing my wife right now because she's in Atlanta. And, it pretty much preoccupies my thoughts.
All right, guys. Well, here's another episode of Gospel and Grace.
Boom.
Pretty much wrapped up. I hope you learned something from this. If we sound like aggressive and stuff like when we talk about it, it's just because we're passionate about it.
They're so mean.
We're tired of evolution being thrown in everybody's face. I mean, you can't even turn on the Discovery Channel without hearing this dolphin was 200 million years old. They have no science to back that up. They just keep throwing it out there. And what's bad is we have institutions like the NCSE doing everything they can to completely eradicate creationism being taught in school. And frankly, they've been a lot louder than the church, and they've kind of gotten their way lately. But so we, along with many other Christians, we want to start being louder than them. And let's teach our kids the truth, that they were created for a purpose, and they are created in the image of God. They are not accidents. They are not cosmic bags of stardust. They are loved, and they have dignity, and
they're created in the image of God.
The Imago Dei.
The Imago Dei
for you guys.
The Imago Dei.
So, all right, James. So, where can people find us, man?
Well, they can head on over to our website at gospelandgraceradio.com. There we have all of our episodes with show notes, and we also have a section where if you guys want to contact, reach out to us, ask questions, leave suggestions for shows, or just anything, you can get at us there. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at /Gospel and Grace.
We're all over them internets, y'all.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. We're on Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes. I mean, we're pretty much, if it's out there, we're on it somehow.
Yeah. So be sure to, I hope you liked this episode. Sorry it's so late in the week. I know we've kind of been putting them on Mondays or Tuesdays, but life got busy this week, guys. So appreciate you listening. And if you like it, share it. Don't you want your friends to hear a little bit of
truth?
We've been dropping that truth bombs.
Truth bombs, and hey, if you're not sharing truth with your friends, are you really a friend? I'm just saying.
Friends share truth with friends.
Real friends tell you the truth, even if it hurts.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Everybody have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch y'all on the next show.
We will catch you later. Bye. See you guys. Take care. Should I go now? All right, bye for real this time. Bye.